Jemarl Paerata, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Kia ora, brothers. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to be here. I'm excited, so thank you for the opportunity.
We are super excited to have you in the Export Beer Garden studio. You got a hell of a story to tell, brother. You excited for it?
I'm really excited. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days and watching some old episodes, and you've had a lot of amazing guests on here, and I've been inspired, and that's what I love about these podcasts, especially yours, is that you can hear people's stories and get inspired. And so that's hopefully after my talk, there's one person out there that can be inspired by my story, then that's why I'm here.
You've got a very excited person sitting over here who hasn't had the privilege yet of hearing some of your story. Stephen speaks so highly of you, so you for me, a really anticipated guest, so I can't wait to crack into it.
Thank you.
So in February, we had a guest called Dave Wood, who is, among other things, Israel Adesanya's breathing and mindset coach. If you haven't already, go and listen to that podcast after you finish this. It's one of the best we've ever done. But after having him on the pod, it set off a chain of reactions, which led to Jemarl being here today. But I actually want to start by talking about Dave. There's so much love out there for him in Between Two Beers land. Can you talk about the epic growth in his Calm Under Pressure workshop and also his business since he was on here in February?
Yeah, well, I've known Dave for a long time, and when he first got started with his business, he was a full-time paramedic. My son, actually, who is a professional surfer and travels the world surfing, used to go to Dave and get some training. So we've had a pretty long relationship, and I live right next to his parents. He's got an amazing father who's a legend in his own right. And just to watch Dave, how he set up his business, and he's helped a lot of people, and he's grown it to what it is today. It's just amazing what he's done, and he's helped a lot of people. He's extremely driven, and it hasn't been easy, but he's had a vision, and he's just followed his heart. And I feel extremely privileged to be involved with what he's creating. And since the podcast in February, we've just been inundated, and I've just got back from Indonesia. We've had 3 Calm Under Pressures. We're going to have to book another one in December, and the podcast has just absolutely catapulted him in some ways. And we've got people coming from overseas, and look, the next 12 months are going to be really interesting, and there's going to be a lot of growth there, and I'm just excited. I'm just really excited, really grateful to be a part of what he's created for the community as well. He helps a lot of people out there, and we're all proud of him. And it's just an epic story.
Can't wait for those royalties, those finder's fees to start coming in from
Surely.
Yeah, there's a lot of it coming your way for sure.
The response to that pod was a real moment for us, and I think it's when we first realised the power of our platform. Because Dave was a guest who came on, and I think the majority of the audience wouldn't have known who he was by name. But it's been one of our most popular episodes, and it just transcended everything. It was just people shared it, and people got so much from it, and people went to the workshop because of it. And I was one of them. So I got invited along to go to Piha and spent 2 days with you and Dave out there. And like you said, it was a really surreal experience meeting people in the parking lot before, and they were sort of like, "Oh, where you from? How'd you find out about it?" It's like, "Oh, I listened to this podcast, bro, Between Two Beers." Like, "Oh yeah, man, that was my podcast." It's like, wow. But that's when I met you. And so this workshop is, it's part breathing, it's part mobility, it's part reconnecting with nature, it's part stress mitigation and understanding our nervous system, but it's also part storytelling. And Jemarl led the karakia on the first day. He helped facilitate a lot of the group conversations where a real sense of community developed really quickly, mostly through vulnerability. And then on the second day, Jemarl spoke. And he did about a 30-minute talk, which moved me greatly and everyone else that was in the room. It was full of emotion, rich storytelling. And I knew before you'd finished that we needed to get you on the show. And to be honest, you were the catalyst for this Lowkey Legends series we've got. Guys with epic stories, which are going to be so helpful to people, perhaps not with the same profile yet, but who knows, with this platform, we might make that work. But yeah, in a weekend of powerful moments, that was what stood out to me as being perhaps the most powerful. And I wanted to start by asking you about telling your story well. and the art of storytelling, how important it is for you to be able to tell your story and capture people's emotions?
Well, we're Māori, and storytelling's a massive part of who we are and how we pass down knowledge. And there's some great stories out there that, that I loved listening to as a child. And with a lot of the stories, there's deeper meanings and morals to those stories. So the power of the story has been something that I've always been interested in. And hey, we all love a good story. That's what this podcast is about. When I decided that I wanted to, uplift my life and change as a person, I started investing in myself and started doing workshops to try and get better. And one of the workshops I did was with a guy called Donald Miller, Business Made Simple, because I was interested in this kind of stuff. And it's all around storytelling, and everyone's got a story. And with business, there's always a hero, and the hero has a problem, and the hero meets a guide, and the guide helps him to solve that problem. You look at Star Wars, Karate Kid, it's all pretty much follows a similar formula. So I got really interested in storytelling and stories, and I thought about my story, how I could help people. And I just had it in my mind that if I can tell my story and uplift just one person, and I always talk about that, just one person, then I'm happy to put myself out here. I'm happy to share, be vulnerable, because I know, like you said, I'm just an average person who's had an average life, a really nice one, but I made some big changes around my values and my principles, and my life has changed completely. So that's why we're here today, to talk a little bit about that. But in the back of my mind, it's how can I help people? Well, I've got a story, and the thing that I tell the rangatahi that I work with is that everyone, including myself, loves a story of adversity where someone messed up or someone had struggles and they overcame it and they went on to do great things. So from this moment on, whatever's happened in the past, we have that opportunity to rewrite the end of the story. So, with these kids that have had hardships and struggles, and not just the rangatahi, just anyone, that you can collect yourself and you can create a positive ending to this. You've got a great start. If you've had trouble and hardships, and not everyone has, but if you have, then you've got a great start to a story, and you have the opportunity to finish that story. And so, that's what I'm hoping with my story, that it's only just started, and there's a lot to do, and I'm creating my own ending.
If you guys don't mind, I might just sit and just listen to...
Sorry.
No, not at all. Don't apologise, because it's so captivating so early. And I often say this at the end of podcasts, is when I've found myself sat and listening are the ones that I enjoy the most. And if this first 15 minutes is anything to go by, I'm going to absolutely enjoy it. So I'll try and chime in every now and again with a question, but I'll maybe
yourself, bro.
I'll leave the guidance to Stephen, and I'll just indulge myself in this.
Keep an eye on me. I can tend to go off. And
no, this is your platform and your story to tell. So please.
All right, I'm going to start with some words from Dave. So we went to Dave and said, give us some insights on Jemarl, and he sent us some pretty incredible voice messages. I'm going to break it down to some of the key points. He said, Jemarl is an integral part of the workshop, and I couldn't run it without him. He brings the sense of calm. He's a very approachable guy, and people can feel it. But there's also this fierceness in there due to his upbringing. He's been through the fire, and I fucking like that. And you can see both, but it's all controlled. He gives this talk on the workshop, and it really impacts people. It is impact because of what he had to go through to get where he is now, and it's one hell of a story. Where he's at now is he just wants to help people. But you can't help people unless you help yourself first. And the thing I like about Jemarl is he's done the deep work. He's done the self-reflection. To do that, you have to be vulnerable and dig deep below the surface, and he's done that. And after doing that, you have to have a really good idea. You have a really good idea of who you actually are or who you want to be. And he's on a real journey. His story resonates with people because it's so relatable. To achieve what he's achieved in a small space of time, you have to have incredible self-belief and courage. And what he's built and building is outstanding. Pretty awesome words from Dave. Enough teasing of the story. I sort of want to get into it by...
it's a hell of a trailer for the story that's coming up.
Yeah. Tell us about your upbringing. I think probably the best place to start. Tell us about your family and your connection to Piha.
So look, I'm a manuhiri there, visitor, sort of thing. I was brought up near Te Awamutu, in a little village called Waikeria, and my father was a prison officer. So I had a pretty nice upbringing. You know, I had a really nice family. You know, there were some arguments. My father, you know, everyone says this about their fathers, but my father was tough. You know, my father's a hard man. My father went to Vietnam. He was brought up in a big family, and you know, you just got the sense that he was very tough, and I knew that from a young age, and I heard rumours of that. So, you know, my dad went to Vietnam. He signed up. He volunteered because he wanted a big OE. He jokes about that, but you know, I think something in him really just wanted to get away and experience the world. But he came back and became a prison officer, and in Waikeria there was a little village, and all the prison officers' families lived there. So we had a tennis court, rugby grounds. Around 1973, when I was born, a long time ago, there was a lot of boys that were born that year. So we used to have this village, and we used to have free reign. And so unlike now, like, our parents had trouble keeping us inside. And we used to just run around, we'd go eeling, we'd go swimming, we'd just roam in the bush, and it was a really, really happy time. And we had our own personal problems as a family, like anyone, but I didn't really have like any hardship in my life when I was a kid growing up. It was quite pleasant, to be honest, yeah.
And then things changed when you were 17?
Well, what happened was I went to boarding school. I was there for a couple of years, and so what I want to kind of stress is that, like, along the way I started picking up some habits of behaviour, some thought patterns. You know, there's all kinds of patterns that you have, and while I was at boarding school, you know, there was a little bit of hitting that went on, and it wasn't the best way to get the best out of me. And so with that came resentment, and so I started resenting people, and I started blaming. You know, I missed out on a rugby team, and I thought, you know, that I should have got in it. And so I used to hold this resentment inside myself, and it kind of followed me through my life. On reflection, when I think about that school, there were so many good things. You know, the tikanga Māori, the rugby. And on reflection of my story, I actually left that school really resilient. You know, I was really strong. I could handle myself. Just one story, I think while I was at Tipene, you know, because I had a tough father, I knew the tough attitude, but I wasn't tough, you know, and the boys at Tipene were tough. They were strong. And I ended up getting into a fight, as you do, and I got a hiding in front of everyone, you know, and from one of my good friends, and that was humbling for me. Not only did I get a hiding, and I didn't perform very well, I got it in front of everyone, and everyone saw it. And so that stuck with me as well, and I kind of held on to that as I moved through my life. But on reflection, I realized how good that school was actually for me. Like, some of it wasn't good, the hitting and the bullying and stuff like that, but I was resilient. I was tough. I went through a period of self-destruction in my life, and you know, I never ever got another hiding like that. And you know, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it taught me morals, it taught me respect, it taught me a lot of really cool things. And when I finally dropped resentment, some really cool things have happened, and I'll talk about that a little later. While I was in boarding school, my parents decided to shift to Australia and said, you know, do you want to come to Australia, or you can carry on at boarding school? And I'd been there for 2 years, coming up to my third year. I decided to shift to Australia with my parents. While we were there, you know, things didn't go well. My parents broke up. My mum came home. So, you know, you can see things are starting to unravel for me. Having a nice time, and now I've started to have a bit of conflict. My mum's left, broken home, staying over there with my dad, but my dad was my hero. And I loved my dad, and I was playing rugby, I had a league, I had a job. I left school, I had nothing. The first thing I did is I went to the second-hand store, bought a lawnmower, and I had a car. I bought a lawnmower and a weed eater, and I just went around and started mowing lawns. I'd mow like 3 or 4 lawns in the morning. By about 2 in the afternoon, I'd have $150, and then I'd just go surfing.
It's not such a bad existence, right?
No, and I was always kind of entrepreneurial. You know, I was always survivor, and I always knew the value of money. So We were there for, a good 3 years, and about a year and a half, it was just myself and my dad. And then my father said to me, look, do you want to go back to New Zealand for Christmas? I'll get you a ticket. And so I was just jumped at it. I was surfing, went back to, my mum lived in Taranaki where my family are, great surf. So I came back for Christmas, surf, caught up with my family. And then one day when I came back from the coast surfing, I got back to the house and I walked in and I looked around and I was like, someone's died. Straight away you can feel that. And I said, what's happened? Why, who's died? And they said, oh, it's your father. And straight away I thought he'd been in a car accident or something. And I was like, okay, this is pretty heavy. And then they said, he's been detained at Bangkok airport and he's been arrested for, trying to smuggle drugs out of there. We don't know where he is, but he's in a lot of trouble. And that's when, my world came apart and I was just shocked. I didn't know how to handle my emotions at that stage. I just had anger and, the resentment. And it was a really tough time for our family. It was really full on.
So your dad is sort of an upstanding member of society, prison officer for 15-ish years. Have
Yes.
I got that right?
Yes.
A former soldier and a poet. Unblemished criminal record.
Yes.
This comes as a huge shock. You find out that he's been trying to smuggle heroin through Bangkok airport, 425 grams, which is punishable by a 30-year prison sentence. You must have had so many questions. Like, do you have answers of what was going on?
Look, my dad was at a midlife as well, and he was struggling. And, luckily we know a lot of things that can help us now that he didn't have access to. And he wanted to get a house and try and sort his life out, and he was struggling. I come from a culture of really big drinkers, and so that was a big scene. He had friends from Vietnam that were over there, and I think, I haven't really talked to him about the details of what went down, but at the core of it, I think he was really struggling. His family had broken up, and I know what that's like, and he wanted, a better future. And unfortunately, he went down that path, and he ended up in prison, and for quite some time he was looking down at maybe the death penalty.
So if you're of a certain age, there's a term, Hotel Bangkok, which has particular connotations, which I believe is where your father was?
Yes.
So I remember growing up, so I'm about 10 years younger than you, and I remember growing up and it was referenced on TV, it was referenced in TV shows, and it was portrayed as like the worst of the worst place that you would want to end up. Without telling your story, did you get an opportunity to visit those conditions or get a chance to see him while he was there?
Yes. Yeah, we did. We went over and visited him. My father is so tough that not once did he complain. Not once did he send us any sort of feel sorry for me letters or anything like that. He took it on the chin, and I'm sure he had his own struggles at the time.
Because contextually, it's still a letters time.
It's a letters time. It's
not
letters.
It's not a Facebook. It's nothing like that, is it?
No, it's letters, and we've got a lot of letters there. He's a great writer. He's very well read. He's a poet, and he was very resilient as well. And we ended up going over there. What we did is, when I met Mel, she said, "Look, I can get him out," and just so you know, Mel's an investigative journalist.
Melanie Reid,
yeah. And so, early on when I met her, she said, "Look, I can get him out." And the truth of it is, she did so much on her own. We put together a documentary. When I say we, she put together a documentary, and part of that was we flew up to Bangkok and we went and visited my father, and we smuggled some cameras in there for the documentary with my son.
Wow.
And we basically had a pram, and we filled it with about 5 cameras. And so when we got to the X-ray machine, we pulled the cameras out, gave them to them, and then we had like a Teletubby with a little hidden camera. and we folded up the pram, pushed it over here. They kept all the cameras and they put our bags through the x-ray. And so then when we got to the other side, we opened the pram, put the Teletubby up on top of the pram, just unzipped it, pressed record, and then pushed the pram along and just videoed everything.
Just pause there. Like, that is an amazing story. Did you think through the consequences that might have been there should you have been caught?
Yeah, we did. We thought them through. I don't know if you've met Mel, but she's an extremely courageous person, and she's very driven, and I had full total belief in what we were doing, and there was some risk. Oh, there was, and the consequences could have been quite bad. But we wanted to get my father out, and we felt at that time that he had done enough time in there. He was up around about 8 years, heading towards 10, and yes, he deserved to be punished, and we never ever questioned that. But we thought, 10 years would probably be enough in that prison, and he'd fought for his country. Some things happened in Vietnam that weren't too good, and that plagued him as well. So that contributed to why he did what he did. And we saw my dad, and it was emotional, and he came out of the cage, and he didn't look fazed. He did look very tough, and there was no fear in his eyes. And when he came out, he was pretty strong.
Was it different to how you had remembered him?
Yeah. There was a change there.
Was the purpose of getting the cameras in to expose the conditions of the jail and get him out? Like, what was the thinking behind it?
Okay, so the documentary was he'd had some trouble in Vietnam, and there was another documentary about that. And in a nutshell, they were crossing a river, someone got shot, and they tried to cover it up, and that affected all of them. And so they had a big part to play for all of them, actually. They all had trouble. They'd all gone down this road that wasn't good. And so we wanted to show that he'd done his time. This is what had happened to him. We've got this documentary. Here's the conditions he's in. And we came back. Mel didn't finish the documentary, but there was a letter sent and said, look, we're looking for a king's pardon. We need the Prime Minister to put a signature on this. And depending on whether we get the signature or not, will kind of dictate how the documentary ends.
Did you get the signature?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we did. And got him out.
So you get
10 years later.
You get him out. And I'm going to move us along because there's so much to cover.
Sorry.
But I feel like we could be here for 30 minutes. I got so many questions. But you get him out. It's had this effect on you already. And what do you do personally? Because you run away to the Chatham Islands?
Yeah, well, after he got arrested, I couldn't go back to Australia. So, yeah, my mum was born on the Chatham Islands. So at about 18, 19, and I was just in self-destruct mode. I was really angry. I had a real fuck you attitude towards the world. I didn't really care about myself. I was wanting to destruct. I wanted it. And I couldn't cope with people talking about it. I couldn't talk about it myself. And I got an opportunity to go to the Chatham Islands, and I took it. And I went and lived down there with my family, and I loved it. I loved living there, and I loved everything about it. I got a job on fishing boats and dive boats. No one really knew my story, and it was an amazing time in my life. And that's where I met Mel as well. So, yeah, I ran away down there. Fast forward, I had a job when my dad came home, I was working in the film industry. We were living at Piha, and he came home and he moved in. We got a little sleep out, and he came home and he lived in the sleep out at Piha. So, it was an amazing time. It felt a lot of release for me. My son was probably about 4 or 5. And yeah, he came and lived with us, and that's a story in itself to getting here. But there was some big changes, but we got him home, and that was the main thing.
So link us up to firefighting, because you did close on 20 years
Close.
in the fire service. And as you're telling your story, I'm thinking of the similarities with Dave, intensive care paramedic. You're in the fire service, and now you're in these totally different careers. But I want to hang out in the fire for a bit, because we've got a few questions about what life was like there. Like, what was your experience as a firefighter?
Quite often my questions all surround like what I've seen on the small screen is my reference point for what the reality of a firefighter must look like, which is entering burning buildings, saving people, putting fires out, and being a hero. I imagine that's a very small percentage of what the reality of a professional firefighter's life is like.
Well, for a start, any firefighter will just cringe at the word hero. You know, I don't think that's what most firefighters don't want that word associated with them. It's a team effort, obviously. But look, I worked in the film industry for about 7 or 8 years, you know, on a bit of a tear, and then I decided, look, the fire service, I had a friend that was in there. I liked the hours. I wanted to surf more. It was a bit more stable. And I got into the fire service and I loved it. You know, like all jobs that I've done, I love them. And when I first joined, it was an eye-opener. In the first 5 years, you learn so much. But that job, I met the leaders that I had, the organisation, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, I can't say anything bad about that job and the job that they do. And a big shout out to all of them and everyone in emergency services that do an incredible job out there every day. And to answer your question, you know, the life of a firefighter, it's not all about kicking down doors and bursting into burning buildings and cutting people out of cars. A massive big part of it is cohabitating on a fire station. You know, that's huge. You know, you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to get on with people, and you have to be able to play your role and do your part. The thing I liked about the fire service is everyone does have a role, and everyone has a procedure. You know, there's a procedure written out there. So any incident you go to, you know your role. This is what you do. You do this, 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 this. And, you know, in the middle of chaos, and you've got structure, and it's all written out there, you can just revert straight back to your procedure. Okay, my job is scene safety. I need to do this. I need to get these cones out. I need to get this door off. You know, we need extricate. And I really did love it. And like I said, it gave me a lot, and it's built me into the person I am today.
Was that role, that metaphor of having structure and chaos, did the fire service role give you structure in a life that had been chaos?
It did. It gave me, like we did 2 days on, 2 nights, and then 4 days off. So we had a 4-day swing, if you like, and I had to be there. You know, every fourth day I'd have to be at work, and you know, you rock up, you have your routine, and so I got a routine, and you know, when you do it for that amount of time, it just becomes clockwork, and I needed that. I needed that to stop me, and it kept me quite level, even though I had 4 days off to do other things, and you know, like I said, you know, I've always been a heavy drinker, and reverted to that. What's interesting is that I started picking up some more bad habits and, you know, patterns, dealing with trauma. When I joined, man, you didn't get vulnerable or anything. You were like, we'd go to something traumatic. It's like, if you're not over it by the time you get back to the truck, by the time we get back to station, you know, it's gone. And so that's how I used to deal with it. And we used to deal with it with a lot of black humor between ourselves, because it's heavy, man. It's heavy. It's heavy stuff. And when you dive deep into it and when you really think about what just happened in that incident, when you get back, you could be dwelling on that for a long time and it does nothing. So for me, I'd get it and I'd just go, boom, put it to the back of my head. Get it, put it to the back of my head. Just, you know, try and suppress it, really.
Has that changed now? Do they have better capacities for dealing with trauma?
They do, and they have a lot of therapists and the like that you can go to. They have a number you can call. I mean, the best therapy for me was sitting around the smoko table. That's when we do our therapy. That's when we talk. That's when everyone knows their role, and you know, you learn from the older guys about how to deal with some of the stuff. And there were times when we'd be on station and we would be vulnerable. but it was pretty tough because, you know, firefighting, you need to be courageous. You need to, people are counting on us to come and save the day. You have to be strong. And also at the station, you can't be too vulnerable or you'll get eaten up. You know, you will. And that goes for a lot of people out there. They're in survival mode, and to be vulnerable, it can be detrimental to their lifestyle. You know, they could just get eaten up, and that could have a whole lot of different consequences.
There's real parallels to Detective Inspector Scott Beard as well, for 40 years in the police service, of being a teenager when he first started and investigated his first murder, through to where he is now, and speaking of the support structures that are now put in place to support those people that are in those emergency services, because it's your first responder.
Yes.
Generally first on the scene.
Yeah, we're right in there, and the role, you know, it's fire and emergency in New Zealand. I always like fire service because that's how I identify it. But the role has got bigger because, you know, with the fire safety, there's not a hell of a lot of fires like there used to be, because we got good at that and we've educated everyone. But so the roles had to grow. And so there's a lot of cardiac arrests, and we're doing a lot of that first responder work. And so that changes the whole dynamics of everything. Once we started doing more cardiac arrests, all of a sudden we just went from doing them occasionally to doing them just about every time we're at work. And it got heavy for a lot of people, you know. So they have got a lot of tools, and they have got a lot of help there if you need it. A lot better than they used to.
Across nearly 20 years, you must have experienced a lot of different leaders. I'm assuming you were in a position as a leader yourself. What did you learn about leader? Like, were there some parts of that you're taking with you now? What did you learn about leadership?
100%. And, you know, good leadership for me is built around trust. You know, you have to know your job extremely well. But for me, the leaders that I connected with the most were the ones that really cared about me and that had my back, and that no matter what, they had me. And when you give me that, I'll do anything for you. I don't, you know, like some leaders try and force people to follow them, you know, and they try and do things that kind of, for me, I just, if you show me trust and you care about me, I'll do anything. You know, I'll follow you because I want to, not because I'm being forced. And so I had an amazing leader called Mike King, just an amazing man, and one of the true mentors in my life. And he was cool, calm, and collected. Firstly, just never saw him frazzled at all. We'd be at like a massive building on fire, people everywhere. And I'd say, oh, look, they need a hand with the aerial. And he'd just look at me real calmly and goes, well, we'll just do one job at a time, eh? You know, and just sort of just calm you right down, and we'd walk. And I learned so much off him, but the key thing that he did for me is he always had my back. You know, whatever happened, he always had the crew first. And so I've taken that into my own life, and I've never been one to use power to try and, you know, because of what happened to me when I was at school. I think bullying is a big problem in New Zealand, and I've never been like that. I don't think you have to. I think a good leader doesn't have to go there, put people down, make them feel insecure, show them that they're superior. You know, a good leader just has that trust, communication, and has got your back. And yeah.
You told me a story about the trauma, and we kind of touched on it there, but I mean, you're surrounded by death a lot. There was one instance, I think you said, that you were sort of cutting people out of a car at 4 a.m. and then having breakfast with your family at 7 a.m. Like, how do you reflect back on that time?
Well, like I said, you know, I would put all the stuff in the back of my head and just lock it away. And sooner or later, you run out of room.
I was going to say, when does it, and how does it manifest? When does it burst out?
Well, this particular incident we're talking about, we went to a car accident, and like war stories, I don't really like too many war stories, but there was a lot of people. There was one fatality. They were all stuck in the car. There was 3 others in the car, and it was like a war zone. And so it was a real technical cutout, and it took a while, and we had to get another rescue tender, and it took a while, and it affected me in a big way. And I mean, when we cleaned up and we jumped in the truck, none of us, we just went, it was just silent, and no one could talk because it was so full on. It was probably the most full on one I'd ever been to. And there was some heavy metal on, and the driver just turned it up. And it was just something like Back in Black, and everyone just started headbanging on the way back in this fire engine, you know, like, because we're so hyped up. But the next day, you know, I got another call, and I think we were going to maybe, it was a child trapped in a car, and the anxiety that I had, I was like, I don't think I can do this. I started questioning myself, and I started I just did not want to be there. And I could feel myself, and I'd never really had that before. And I don't know, that's when I really started thinking, hey, this is probably affecting me a little bit more than I like to think. And then when I was going to all the cardiac arrests, that's you know, man, that's heavy. That's heavy. You're in the living room with a family. You know, there's some pretty spiritual stuff going on, and I didn't really cope with it that well. And I started with personal life as well. It wasn't going too well, and I had to go get some help and some counselling.
Before you did that, what were your coping mechanisms?
I'd try and make fun of it. Yeah, I'd try and just crack jokes. I'd try and forget about it, like, as quick as I could. I never dwelled on it. You can't, you know, but it was unhealthy what I was doing. It was unhealthy, and I used to drink. Yeah, the drink helped me. The drink was my go-to for anything. You know, bottling things up and then opening a bottle. And then opening a bottle. That was my coping mechanism to just about everything, and running away. Yeah.
When you gave the talk in the Come Under Pressure workshop, you sort of picked it up from this point, and I'm hoping we can do the same now. From the outside looking in, it looked like you were a guy that had it all. You know, you were working for the fire service, you had the family, your son was a professional surfer, and you were sort of following him around the world. Some days on, some days off. It looked like you had it. But inside, it was all starting to fall apart. And this is where the story gets really good, because we're going to talk about how you got out of it and where you're at now. But can you take us to that point where you realised things had to change?
Yeah, I guess things started getting really hard about 10 years ago when we had a split up, you know. Mel and I decided, you know, mostly from my own doing, I broke the family up, basically. And that was really tough. And I would go to work, and I was going to tell my crew that we've had a marriage breakup. And every day I'd go in there, we'd sit down, we'd get dinner ready, and I was working out how I was going to say it, and I was building up the courage. And we'd get there, and I'd always get to that moment, and I just couldn't do it. And I didn't for months. And I was just holding on to this stuff. And I did, I've got this thing where I just run from my problems, and surfing has always been there for me. And so I ended up just running around the world, basically, surfing, drinking heavily, running from myself. I was looking for all this external stuff to make me happy. Internally, I was an absolute mess. I would finish work, I'd do these long shifts, I'd hardly have any sleep, I'd get really drunk, and I'd just stay in my cabin, and I couldn't come out. And I was ashamed of who I'd become and what I'd created, and the relationships I was having, not just at home but at work and with my friends, were starting to disintegrate because of my behavior, and things were just really tough. I did this thing where I did 3 months on, 3 months off, and I'd go away with Elliot, we'd go to a couple of comps, and then I'd go and just get on these benders, you know, and I'd come back from 3 months, straight back to the fire station, straight onto the truck, just punch out 24-hour shifts and just go for it, and just running from myself, basically, and just never ever stopping for a moment. It was all go, you know, just, you get addictive to that upregulated state of stress. You know, I liked it. I wanted to be there, and it stopped me from going over here and reflecting.
It's so, and what you're saying just hits me so hard because I feel some similarities. Never been a first responder or anything like that, but that notion of running away, that notion of drowning your challenges and not confronting them through alcohol, I lived that life as well. I traveled all over the world in a football dream, and it was easy to jump on a plane, fly to another destination, forget about whatever was happening back at home. Do that, it's exciting, you're high adrenaline, you're always on the go, you come back, you do the same thing, you're on like a wheel, but you never actually have to deal with anything concretely because there's always that next thing that you get to go to down the line. It's probably a very familiar trope, it's probably a very familiar story, but giving it oxygen really helps people work through it, and I really salute you for opening up and sharing it, because I can see and I can tell, and I feel it as well, that it's uncomfortable admitting some of those dark parts of your life.
Yeah. It wasn't a happy time, and from the outside looking in, people thought I was happy, and I'd do things like I'd go to Berlin and I'd party in Berlin and do all this stuff, and I'd remember being in an apartment there, and I've never felt more alone in my life. I've never felt more alone, more empty, I was a mess. And, we've all got our own stories, and I hit rock bottom, and COVID hit. I couldn't run anymore, and I got stopped here, and it got heavy, and I started drinking again. I reverted back to that. I was heavily drinking, going to work, up all night, doing all these things that weren't good for my health, and building up all this trauma and all this stuff, and blaming everyone. I blamed everyone, everything under the sun. And sooner or later, you got to hit rock bottom. And for me, I had to go there. I had to go right down the bottom because I needed it in a weird way.
So what happens when you hit rock bottom?
When you hit rock bottom, you start having really selfish thoughts about it might be better if I wasn't here. Those kind of thoughts start popping up, and you're not coming out of your room when you've got any time. You're hungover. All you're thinking about is drinking or doing overtimes and working. You're never ever talking or being vulnerable or thinking about life. You're covering over everything. And at my darkest hour, and there was a real dark hour where I was bad, and I was in a real painful place. I had a vision of my son, and he was 3 years old in this vision. And he was on my arms, and he was holding my pounamu, and he's looking at me, and he was going, "Dad, I love you. I love you," And in that moment, I was like, I was like, how can you do this, I knew that no one was coming to rescue me, and I knew that no one was coming to save me, and that I had to take responsibility for everything from this point on if I wanted to change. I knew that I'd created a negative environment, a negative reality, but in the back of my mind, I knew that I could create a positive one. I knew that I had to stop blaming people, and I acknowledged that. And when you're not getting the results that you want, you have to look at your habitual habits, your thought patterns in your paradigms. What are you doing? What are you doing with your time? Because whatever you're doing and you're not getting the results, you need to think about what you're doing. So I always knew drinking was holding me back. I was in the film industry for 7 or 8 years, the party scene, being a big part of who I am. And in that moment, I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop drinking. I know that that's my problem. And I think if you're out there and you're having problems, I think you know what's causing those problems. I think deep down you've got the answers. And I knew. And so I was like, I'll do one day. Just do one day. And this is how my mind works. I thought, I'll have one more. I'll have one more big day. And I invited all the boys over. They didn't know. They helped me move this this big water tank, and we all moved it, and we placed it on the hill. We had a barbecue. We got on it, and none of them knew, but that was the day. And so I did 1 day, I did 2 days, you know, I did 3 days, and I just, it was really confronting.
Did you tell anyone?
No, I told no one. I just stopped. And, you know, 1 week turned into 2 weeks. And then what happens when you stop drinking? Because it consumes all your thoughts, it consumes all your money, but more importantly, it consumes all your time. And so all of a sudden, I've got all this time on my hands.
Sunday mornings are great. Eh? Yeah. There's this time that I didn't know existed.
Yeah,
like
I didn't
7 till 11 on a Sunday morning. Like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And I ended up with all this time on my hands all of a sudden, and I had a bit of energy. I started getting a bit of energy back. So I knew this too. I was like, I can't just sit here because it was so confronting. And all you can think about when you're in that state is how bad everything is. That's the thought pattern. That's where all my thoughts were going, how it messed everything up. So, I don't know, but it came to me, you need to start learning. Just learn something. Fill this gap.
Sorry, is this during COVID as well? So have you
Yes.
extra time as well?
I'm still at the fire station.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still at the fire station, but I've got a bit of time on my hands. So I decided to start learning, and I started learning about meditation because I wanted to calm my emotions. I was always reactive. I was brought up, you know, like you have a problem, you sort it out in an aggressive way. I started learning about holistic health. You know, health is everything. I started learning about self-development. I started looking into things like the power of positivity, manifestation, the universal laws. I started censoring everything that was coming into my brain and censoring everything that was coming out. So I uplifted it. I stopped watching the news. I got off social media. You know, I didn't get involved with criticism or complaining, because it's, you know, positive thinking to me is not just being positive all the time, because that's almost impossible, but like it's minimizing complaining, minimizing criticizing, minimizing being judgmental. And I just went on this path, and within 3 months, like it happened really fast, I was sitting there thinking, something really good's happening here. I can feel it. I'm changing. And not only was I changing, but my external world was starting to uplift, and people were different with me, and they could tell. I started listening to podcasts. I started reading books. I read a book called The Untethered Soul.
I downloaded that on the drive up because I've heard you reference it before, so I've downloaded it on my Audible just to listen.
And by Michael Singer, and that was a life changer for me. In that book, I learned that, you know, when you get angry, what I was doing was I'd go to work, have an argument or disagreement, or something would happen. I'd drive home and I'd get angry and I'd get frustrated. I'd think about that moment or that person. Now that person's at home having dinner with his family. He's moved on. That situation's happened. What was happening was I was making myself angry, and every time I did that, it was affecting my health. And so the only person that was suffering from my anger and my resentment was me. And you know, like it seems so simple, but when the penny dropped for me, that's what I'd been doing all these years, it was like, wow, I've wasted a lot of time, you know?
Up until this point, I mean, all the partying and the drinking, it seems, was for you selfish, perhaps, you might say.
Yes.
You start going on this learning journey, but you're still with the fire service.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes a decision to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big call, right? This is a stable career. It's everything you've ever known. Talk through the approaching the decision to leave the fire service.
Yeah, well, after 6 months, I was on a high, and I'd almost gone up into this other stratosphere, and I was floating around, and people were looking at me going, wow, what is wrong with him? You know, and I'd invested in some workshops. I'd learned, you know, I started taking interest in money. I've never done that. I've earned my wage, and, you know, I've got my paycheck, and I get from paycheck to paycheck. And I've never really taken any interest in money or business or any of that stuff. And I started to ask some questions and reflect. I started asking questions like, okay, I had a hard time at boarding school. What part did I play in that? Could I have done anything differently there? And I could have, you know, I could have done things differently. And what was the positive things that came out of it? And the positive things were amazing. So I started just viewing the world a little bit differently. I started asking, what is my purpose? You know, why am I here? Like these questions I'd never asked. I'd never ever thought about it. I was the guy who was struggling and looking for a way, and I went out under the full moon at like 2, 3 in the morning on the beach, and I asked the universe, I asked for guidance. Guide me, help me. I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be like this. Show me the way. And all these things just started coming to me and happening for me, and I just started feeling really good about life. I started learning about goal setting through some workshops that I'd been doing. I got mentoring myself. And my mentor said to me, what is it that you truly want to do in this life? What is it that you truly want to do personally and professionally? I want you to write a list, and I don't want you to let anything get in the way of putting what it is that you want on that list.
How many times did it take you to write what you wanted on that list?
It's still sort of changing, but it's a hard one. But I got I want to be cool, I want to be calm and centered. I want to listen to people. I want to have an endless love for my family and friends. I want to help people. Just simple stuff like that. I want to create a service that helps people. That's what I want to do professionally. I want to try and uplift and inspire as many people as I can. And I'm well aware that this isn't for everyone, and that if you think everyone's gonna understand you, then that's actually quite delusional. And I've had to find my own way through that. And like I say, and I bring it back, if there's just one person listening right now that's listening to the story and is struggling, I want to say that you can change. That you can change. I've changed. I never thought I could. And I know people are struggling way harder than me, but everything that I've done is internal, and I didn't need anything external.
So this was the formation of Te Kaiarahi? Is this the foundation of it?
It is. It's the foundation. So I started learning that to be of service and to help people was my path. I've always been in that, fire service, but I wanted to help. When I told my family, look, I'm going to resign. They were shocked. They're like, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to help people. How can you help people? What can you do? Good question. And it was coming from love. What can I do? And I thought about that, and instead of focusing on all the obstacles, I focused on what I can do and what were my strengths. Okay, my strengths. Live at Piha, surrounded by te tai ao. I'm Māori, I'm a Māori, and that's a huge strength for me. I've got principles like manaakitanga, whanaungatanga, kotahitanga, just 3 simple ones that I share. I surf, and I know Dave. That was a big part of it as well. And Dave didn't know it at the time, but I just got to this place where I couldn't carry on another 20 years doing that and being that person. I'd done it, and I'd loved it, and that's enough. 20 years is enough of that. I wanted to create my own vision, my own dreams. I wanted to have the courage to go off and pursue that, and I thought the best way to do that would be to resign and leave myself no other option. There's no other option. Make this work.
When you put those ideas out and actually give them air, tell people, is there fear of the reaction to that's going to be? Because a lot of people probably have those thoughts of, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this is what I want to do. And then when it comes, maybe like it was when you were thinking about trying to tell that about your relationship breaking down, it just doesn't come out because you're worried about the reaction back. So how did you get over, if that was even a thing, that fear?
I told the people I loved what my plan was. I didn't really go into too much detail with anyone else. When I put my resignation in at the fire station, they were shocked, and everyone was shocked. And it got around the fire station. Man, that information like that moves pretty quickly. And so I was getting calls from area managers and saying, are you okay? Do you need time off? Is everything? Because I had a really good reputation in the fire service. They even said, look, if you leave, you can come back. Just let us know, And then, I even got pulled into the office and said, look, are you making the right decision? Because it's such a great job. But I just knew that I couldn't carry on another 20 years there, because I would go in there every day and go, I should have left. And once I made my decision, there was no stopping it. And I handed in my resignation. I thought about, here's the other thing. I started getting into my te reo Māori and my tikanga. And
Because where had that been along your journey prior to that?
since school, since tipene, I hadn't really gone there, and to my own detriment. A couple of years ago when I made these changes, that was included in the things that I started learning, actually. I forgot to say that, but it was a big part, massive part for me. And it gives me a lot of strength. I started learning my whakapapa, karakia. I'm so lucky to have a kaiako, Mike Kepa, who I meet every Sunday, and we go through karakia, whai kōrero. He teaches me about the marae and tikanga and the atua. And it's just been invaluable, and like I'm learning. I'm at a real early stage, but I know for a lot of our people, the answers are within Te Ao Māori, without a doubt. And so it's been huge.
That was a really important part of the workshop for me. The karakia at the start, that aspect of it, it created this genuineness. So it's hard to describe, but I felt, that was the first thing we did on the first day. That, your part in that is so important, and we're going to start building into the relationship with Dave, because you've got this business is starting to get off the ground, you've left the fire service. How did you approach Dave? How did you get connected with him, and was that difficult?
Well, so I've got nothing apart from an idea. And
Not even a client, not even
a client,
not even a pilot project?
I had a coaching program that I've got and I've still got that I've been through that's helped me change my life, and I've got the rights to that, and I thought, well, that's part of where I want to head, and it's still there, and I have a couple of people that are running through that with me, and they're doing extremely well. So I had that. That's about all I had. Learned about my whakapapa, I started learning, and this was a real awakening about, the Battle of Orako, which plays heavily in my whakapapa with Hitiri Te Paerata, my great-great-grandfather. And in that battle, he lost his father, his uncle, and his son, and his sister was shot 4 times. So, that was only a couple of generations away from my father. And so I started piecing all this together, and you can feel really angry. I cried. I knew the story, but when I started really going into it, I cried and I cried, and I felt this anger within me. And when I stopped crying, I thought, with the learning that I'm doing, I've got to come from a place of love, understanding, and compassion. I can't be resentful. I've done resentful. I've done anger. What can I do to give back to my people and people in general? And I thought, well, I can uplift the rangatau. And that's where Te Kaiarahi came from. I thought, that's what I'll do. I'll help the youth. And I know 40 minutes away from where I live is the biggest city in Aotearoa, and half these kids don't get out into te taiao, out into nature. So that's where it started. And so I had this idea, the goal setting, and in one of the workshops I'd done, they said, look, you can use social media as a marketing tool. If I held a meeting and said, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, probably 5 people would come. But I've got 1,000 friends on Facebook. They know people. So I started posting this stuff, helpful, uplifting messages. And Piha's a small place, and they started talking, and it was a shock for everyone. And Dave actually says, he's in the car park, and people had thought I was nuts. And I was only saying that to be nice, use your imagination, set some goals. And I was the one that was and it was coming from a good place too, because it was a shock for everyone. Dave saw it and said, look, come up to the house. I need to talk to you. What the frick? What's going on? They're talking, they're talking down at the car park. And we need to figure out, because he understood. He listened to the message. He actually listened to it, and he understood it. So I went up there and we sat in his gym. I talked to him about what I was doing, some of my goals, and I had this presentation. And I gave it to him about goal setting. Not life-changing, world-changing stuff. It's all pretty similar. But it's about creating this massive vision that you've got no idea how you can achieve it, and then breaking it down into yearly, monthly, weekly, daily goals, and just doing little things every day that are going to help you head in that direction. And it's not about getting there. It's about moving in that direction, having some direction. And I figured, that was a big part that was missing for me, was real direction. And so Dave believed in you.
Yes. Were there lots of, did you have to work with Dave to get him to believe in you? Or was it
Yes.
doubters that thought that this was a bad idea?
They were all in the car park.
They're still down there. I think it was a shock. It was a shock to everyone, and even my family were a little bit like, "Wow, what's going on?" I saw you guys had a few cringe words a few weeks ago, and it made me laugh. It made me laugh because I went to Mal now there, and I said, "Look, I'm on a journey." And they fucking looked at me and they just about spewed up.
Journey. Yeah, we've got to retire. We've got to retire that word.
Yeah. But, they kept me grounded. And, it was, I don't think a lot of people understood me, to be honest. But people were messaging me like people that I didn't really know were going, "Hey, I saw that message. It's really helped me today." And so there was a few people that I was getting through to. And then I showed Dave the presentation, the goal setting one. He shared it with some athletes. A couple of them did really well with it. He got a message back, like one boxer, he went to Australia and won a title, messaged him and said, "Hey, that goal setting stuff really, really beneficial and helped me." And then this is about 3 months after I resigned. Dave rings me. He says, "Look, I've got a group from Sports New Zealand. They're coming out. I want to start these workshops, and this is going to be like the prototype. I want you to do a karakia and present your goal setting." And I ended up going. They started coming in. I had this presentation. I was nervous. I wanted to help people. I wanted to talk to people, but I didn't realize how nervous I could get. And as they came in, I turned around, I looked over, and I saw Hamish Carter coming through. And I just went into shock. And, self-sabotage, all the stuff in my mind. I started getting the shakes. I said to Dave, is that Hamish Carter? He said, yeah, it's Hamish Carter. Don't worry about him. And I was thinking to myself, I'm giving Hamish Carter a goal-setting presentation. What the hell? This is surreal. Yeah.
But I'm sure your PowerPoint knocked them away.
I tell you, I was so nervous. My body got up and my voice sat down, and I knew, whoa. Hold on, we've got a problem. I want to communicate. I want to help a lot of people, but I'm struggling to get up in front of people. It went okay. Dave went perfect, but I don't think it did. But went okay, and it got better when I involved Hamish in the conversation. He had some amazing information. We had a whiteboard. It wasn't on the stand properly. Every time I went to write on it, my hand was shaking like this, and I was just like, it was nerve-wracking. I got through it. And I've done a whole heap more since then. And I used that day to market myself. And so there was a photo of me talking to the group, put it back on Facebook. It was amazing to talk to these people. I want to help inspire rangatahi, goals, all this sort of stuff. A few days later after that, I get a phone call from Hawani Waititi, the principal. He said, we're friends on Facebook. We went to school together, Tipene. And so Harirua, he rings me, goes, "Bro, I love what you're doing. Come in. I've got a couple of the kaiako for you to talk to. Come in there and we'll have a talk about what you're doing." And so I go into the kura, and he goes, "Oh yeah, come." I meet him outside his office. He says, "Come around the corner." And then we go out the back and we go behind the wharenui. And there's a room out the back there, and it is full. It's full. It's got all the teachers, like over 30 people in there. And I'm like, oh my God. Start getting the shakes again. And then he introduced me. I shared what I wanted to do and my vision of connecting them back to Te Taiao, goal setting. And luckily they agreed to send a group of rangatahi out, and about, 4 or 5 days later, I had my first group. And that was about 3.5 months after I resigned.
So now the business is starting to snowball. You get attached to Dave and he brings you in the workshop. And you spoke about this, and I wanted to talk about it, is the troubled youth you started working with and the Ram Raiders and these kids. And I think you and Dave both have this authenticity which breaks through to people which otherwise perhaps messages couldn't get through to. I haven't said that very well. But when these kids came out with you and spent time in Piha, talk to me about how you broke through those bonds and what you've learned from those experiences.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a lead up to that. After I had that first group, they went back, raved about it, and then I get a phone call again the next week from the principal, Harirua, who's been one of my biggest supporters, saying the kids are raving, we want to send all the teachers out. So next thing, I've gone from nothing to, in the matter of a week, I've had one group and 30 teachers. And then after that, things just started flowing. Dave started inviting me back to the workshops, started doing them, started doing work with LifeWise, started doing work with Mā Te Huruhuru, started doing more work with Hoani Waititi. And things just started growing and escalating. And I got to a point, and, you know, when you were asking me that question about fear, you know, so there were times where I was like, have I done the right thing? You know, and I got to a point where there was a little bit of a downtime. And I was wondering, what am I, you know, where are we going to head to next? And then I get a phone call. And these things just kept coming to me. I had a phone call from a really, really good close friend of mine, Grant Malins, who works for the education department and helps a lot of at-risk youth. He said, look, we've got this group of boys. They're high offenders. We don't know what to do with them. They've all been expelled. They're like 13, 14 years old. I love what you're doing. Do you think you can help them? And for me, you know, I'm into high power stuff. And that's the higher power saying, you want to help? Here you go. Here's a group of kids. Let's go. What have you got? And I just said, yes, I can help them. I didn't know how. You know, I had my program. But I'd never dealt with kids like this. And so we came to an agreement. We worked it all out. And then, yeah, I had them out there for the first day. And the first day when the rangatahi come to me, it's just all about trust. They've got to trust me. You know, they feel comfortable with me before I push anything on them. So the first thing we do is we feed them. You know, we get them comfortable. Then we went up to a lookout. We have a karakia and a little mihi whakatau, and we introduce each other. I tell them what it's all about, and I put some responsibility on them. And they're all just sitting there, just looking at me, going, "What the, you know, what's this guy all about?" You know, and they're standoffish and they're in fight or flight. That 24/7. That's how they operate. And I could tell that they were thinking, they were getting edgy, but very polite. I could sense this. And so I thought, I need to get them in the water really fast. So we went down to the blue pools and we went for a swim. And they didn't want to go for a swim and the sand and all this sort of thing. And then I told them about some of the stuff that I get from Dave's workshop. You know, I share that with them about bringing things in. And, you know, it's not about everything being easy. You know, we can do some hard things. They're going to help us grow. Anyway, we go down for a swim. I can't get them out of the water, and they love it. So I just leave them in there, and we just swim all afternoon, lie in the sand, start talking to them about manaakitanga, care for one another, start talking to them about every time we come here, we want to look after each other and have a good time. That's what the objective of these days are. We don't want to come out here and have a bad time. I said to them, this workshop, or this day is not just, you know, it is about you, but it could be about the little kid that's over in Tamaki Makaurau that's struggling, that needs to come out here. So the better that you do with this program, you know, we can get those kids that might need it. It's not just about you, and try and put some responsibility onto them. I was really lucky that the main boy who was like the alpha, he loved it. I think he liked the positive role model. And he loved the swimming. He loved being in nature. They loved the karakia. They loved that stuff. You know, care for one another, working toward kotahitanga, working towards a goal together, and coming in as a community. And yeah, we're just having fun. We'd slide down the sand dunes, and we'd go for walks into the Ngāhere up to waterfalls, and go for swims. We did jiu-jitsu. We did breath work. And over 3 weeks, we started forming this bond, and it started getting really strong, and they wanted to come. I'd take them for hikes, and we'd be hiking down Karikari, and it would be hot, and they've got all their clothes on, we're like trudging through the sand, and they're like sweating. They're out, it's out of their comfort zone. And you know, I say, you know, when things are hard, you change the language. You know, this is a big part of it. What are you saying to yourself? And when we were walking down there, one of them goes to me, "Hey, mister," and I was like, "What's up?" And he goes, "It's not even hot down here, eh?" And I go, "Nah, it's not even hot. It's not even hot, eh, boy?" He goes, "Nah, it's not even hot, eh?" And then another one goes, "Hey, mister." I was like, "Yo, what's happening?" He goes, oh, it's not that far. It's not that far, eh? He goes, it's not as far as walking to Wellington. And so we just actually had a lot of fun, but in between that fun, like I'd teach them about the rips, and I'd teach them that, there's a lot of dangers and there's a lot of risks out here, and whenever you get into that situation, you just want to learn as much as you can to make yourself safe and show them where we can swim and what we can do. And I guess I took them surfing. They loved surfing. Getting into the water, because when you're out in the ocean, man, you got to pay attention. And when you're out there, you can't think about all the problems. You're in the moment. It sounds a bit cliche, but that is the truth. When you're out in the surf, it's an amazing gift, and they feel it. And we had some crazy success. So we did this first 3-week round, 2 days a week, and they wanted to do another one. And then we did another one. And then we ended up doing 4 in a row. The offending dropped considerably. Some of it didn't, but they had really good evidence that it had dropped. One boy went on to get a job, and he had a family group conference, and he said coming out to Te Kaiarahi, he played a big role in him inspiring him to change the direction of his life. So we know it's working. I love it, and I just come from a place of love, understanding, and compassion, and it's working for me. I don't run it like a boot camp or anything like that. I show them real compassion. I show them I care about them. I've got their back, and that's that leadership stuff, and I follow that through.
And they confide in you things they wouldn't tell other people, right? I remember you talking about the Ram Raiders, their sort of code of ethics they have.
Yeah, well, look, they did start opening up to me, and we'd have these conversations. We'd be lying in the grass somewhere, and we'd be just having a chat, and then I'd say, like, where do you get the cars? And I'd be like, oh, we get them anywhere, like this. And then he looks at me and goes, but we wouldn't just steal any car. Oh, really? And he goes, no, I wouldn't steal a car with a baby seat in it. And I was like, maybe I should get a baby seat.
Yeah, life hack.
Yeah. And he goes, no, we've seen your car. We wouldn't steal that one. and so, and it's hard on them. Like, I know, because everywhere they look, it's bad. School's bad. At home's bad. The society come down on them. There's nowhere for them to go, and the only people that are opening their arms for them is the street culture. That's where they're getting accepted. So I don't know. And so, like, my good friend Dean Brady at Level Up Mentoring, he puts it perfectly. We've got antisocial behaviour, and we're punishing them with antisocial behaviour, and expecting some different results. And I have to tread carefully, because there's people out there doing some amazing work, and I get the rangatahi occasionally, and I don't know how you get them into a classroom and do that stuff. I've got te tai ao. It's an adventure. The stuff I'm teaching out there under a waterfall, they're listening, they're feeling it. We did a questionnaire. What is it about this program that you love the most? The breathing. They love the breathing, the breath work. It's crazy, because they kind of make fun of it when I tell them, and then they're lying back there and they're just they're just so relaxed, and it's all stopped, and some of them fall asleep, and that's okay too. They just come back and they say things like, I've never felt like that. I've never felt that calmness.
Your cup seems so full. You remind me a lot of Daniel Kiriopa, who's been through a similar journey. Go back and listen to that episode.
Oh, I did. I love it. I love him.
And you're at a point where you're just all about giving back, and you just the passion comes through you. Like, it's so important to help people. It's all it's about, helping. Where are you? I mean, it's 2 years-ish since you've started. Are you already far beyond what you thought was possible when you started? You've keeping changing these goals. Like, what are the goals now?
Well, I do have a big vision, a 10-year vision, a massive one, and it's way out there. I've ticked a lot of boxes with the goals that I've set, and I've set them and I've accomplished them fairly quickly. I'm blown away that not only is everything working out for me, but just the absolute joy I'm getting out of life and living this life, and how I've changed my life just by the internal stuff, and I never really understood what the internal stuff, what that meant. But what I think it means is, like, everything I did, I didn't need anything external. So like I looked at holistic health, it was the nutrition, it was the sleep, it was the breathing, it was the thoughts. They're massive. The thoughts create everything. And then it was getting out and moving and reconnecting with nature and reconnecting with everyone around me. So I'm getting so fulfilled from doing that. It's exciting times. I've got some really cool people who are coming into my world, and it's like you hear about this attraction thing, and it's happening. And I've got a lot of really cool people. I don't know if I mentioned Jeanette Searle, but she is helping me. And if anyone recognises that name, they'll know that she's an amazing person, and she's been guiding me and mentoring me. And the things that we've got planned for the next 12 months are huge. The things that we've got planned with Woody are huge. And I just want to try and spread the love. And, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I'm just me. I'm just this average guy who's changed his life around. And I haven't needed anything to do it apart from just doing the eternal work, meditation, goal setting, visions.
Yeah, the average guy, the inspiring average guy is what this is all about. So you've got the two hats. You've got the Te Kaiarahi,
Yep.
And you've got Calm Under Pressure. If we can just talk a little bit about how that is blowing up, because Dave said you're an integral part of it. You're a sort of a collaborator with him on it now. And we were talking before about how, and I remember being on it thinking I was really lucky to be in it at ground level. I think there was 23 of us, and it was starting to take form. And every single person that was on that course was going home to tell someone else they have to do it. And as word spreads and you get some influential people coming in and taking their corporates through, like it's just going to grow and grow and grow. I know you've already been getting international interest. How do you scale something like that up? Does it have to be you and Dave? Like, is there limits to how big that can get?
Look, it is growing, and the work that he's done, it's amazing. And so the thing with Dave is, what he did for me. You can't put that into words, or you can't measure that. But the amount of love that I have and trust that I have for him, I only want to see the best for him. It's worked really well because we're quite different in a lot of ways. We have similar beliefs, similar values, but the way we work, because I feel stuff. I don't need someone to break down what's happening in me internally when I take 5 breaths, close my eyes and try and get into a parasympathetic state. I can feel it, and I know that it's working. Dave can really break that stuff down in a really simple way, and some people need that. We are getting so many people, and after the podcast, it just blew up, and everyone that's coming on there is saying, "Oh, we heard Dave on a podcast," and he's doing speaking. The ripple-on effects of the work he's doing is just going far and wide, and it's making it to New York. It's made it to Asia. We're getting people coming over from there. I know that Dave wants to make this the best breath workshop in the world, and I've got no doubt that he can do that. And where to from here? I don't know if I'm the right person to be saying some of this stuff, but just watch the next 12 months. It's going to go.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was on it. I think it probably already is. Not that I've been on any other breathing workshops, but it just wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
The start where you're sitting around in circles, there was 23 of us and everyone's sharing their vulnerabilities. Yeah. And it was builders and physios and doctors and surgeons, and the layers came down straight away, and people were revealing parts of themselves, which I'm pretty sure some of them had never said out loud before. And the power of it and the way that it instantly created community, and then you're on this journey for 2 days as everyone is learning together these all different holistic parts of your life and health. I was like, fuck, man, this is so powerful.
It's so cool, and it happened fairly organically. It just happened, and the great part of it is that people come and they're not sure what they're gonna get, and the first part of the day that is not what they expected. They say things like, "Oh, when are we running the dunes?" It's like, "Oh, hold on, we're not running the dunes," because they see Izzy running up and down the dunes. And the vulnerability part, we just organically found that, and it breaks everyone down. And so this workshop, we've had people from all walks of life, high achievers, gold medalists, rugby players, tradies, housewives, just everything, emergency services. And when we sit down in that circle and we become vulnerable, because we ask them when they first get there, we want you to be vulnerable. There's a time and a place, and today's the day that we're going to get vulnerable. And there's this misconception that it's a weakness. I mean, there's a time and a place to be vulnerable. And they come and they start sharing some of their weaknesses. And when you go around, everyone's got them. They're all the same. And the more we do this, the more I'm thinking there's so many people out there struggling. The other really powerful thing about both of the workshops, mine and his, is that people are isolated, like myself, dealing with this by ourselves. And we don't know the answers. And when they come together, be vulnerable, learn how to control their emotions through the breath, but it's much more than a breath workshop. It's about connecting spiritually, mentally, physically. Talk about mental health. Well, hold on, what about the physical and the spiritual? In Māori, we're spiritual. We're connecting with that stuff. So, that it's not just a breath workshop. It's much more than that. And it's developed over the time. And we're getting big corporates from New York coming that are killing it in the business world. But emotionally, they're a little, they're struggling like the rest of us. And they're coming back, and they want to, get more of their friends to come, or we go there, depending on how it works.
Do you reckon we get Shay on there?
100%. Love to have him out there. Love to have him out there. Because the other thing about it too is it's not who's the strongest. It's not who's the fastest. It's got nothing to do with any of that
Who's
stuff.
the funniest?
You'd probably win that.
Hey, a question that's bouncing around in my head. For all of what you do and the amazing things you do and you put on the universe, it's a cliche question, but do you have a why? Like, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
My why is my son. Yeah, that's my why. He's my everything. First and foremost, above everything that I do and everything that I am, I'm a father. And it's really important to me that I show him that I could get to 47 and fuck things up, but I can change. And it's never too late to change. I'm at and I just want him to, obviously you want your kids to be proud of you. I was a very young father. When I heard he was coming, I was 22 years old, and I've changed, obviously. But I just love my son so much, and he's my everything, and he's taught me so much. But he holds me accountable for how I hold myself and the person I want to become, which is probably one of the more important things that I'm after.
And he's pretty exceptional himself. Is he a New Zealand surfing champ, professional surfer?
He's won the national title. We've travelled the world. I've been blessed. I got him into surfing for purely selfish reasons, because I knew if he surfed, I'd surf. So, I could take the kids away to Raglan and, give Mal a rest. And he's just taken it to another level. And when he was 12, he got sponsored. And from 12 years old to now, we travel the world a lot. He's taken me everywhere. I've met some of my heroes of surfing through him. I've lived it through him. I've tried to be the dad and not so much the coach. But I film a lot. I love that, and we've got a really strong relationship.
The thing I think I love most about the story is we're getting it in the beginning phases. If we get you back in 10 years' time, like, holy shit! Like, what are you, like 3 years into this transformation?
I looked at that today, and we keep mentioning. I resigned September 2001. I hooked up with Dave at March, I think, or February, March. So we haven't even really done 2 years, and every year non-negotiable for me is to spend two or 3 months in Indonesia with my son, or traveling with my son. So for about 4 or 5 months I've been away, and so we've got a lot to do, and I'm really passionate. But I've got a massive 10-year goal, massive one. Like, and I keep that to myself, that vision, and it'll change, but it's huge, and I've got no idea how I'm going to get there. but the way it's unfolding, I don't really care. And if I ever do get close to it, I'm going to move it. And another thing is, there's this thing about 65 as retiring. I never want to retire. I never want to stop. And I think by the time I'm 65, I'll be hitting my straps then. That's when I'll be refining my craft and helping people. That's exciting.
Be foolish to bet against you, bro. You got that passion. Like Dave said, you got that fire. Shay, any little bits and pieces for?
No bits and pieces. It's been an incredible ride.
I just want to thank you, man. Like I said at the start, the idea for Lowkey Legends came from listening to your talk on the workshop. Messages, having this platform to get messages like this out there are going to help so many people, because so many people are trapped in that place you were. And to see at a later stage in life that you can turn things around and the goodness you can do and put out in the world is so inspirational, and it's so important. So thanks so much for coming in, man. This is going to be so well received. Love it.
Thank you, brothers. Thank you so much for the invite. It's an honor. It's an honor, and I just hope that anyone who needs to hear this, you can change. You can change the course of your life, your environment, and who you are. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hang on, Shay.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to throw it to the big guy.
No. Like, what you're saying is true. Like, it's funny. I've said this a number of times on the podcast. Like, the amount of times that real life cross-sects with what we do on the pod, and for whatever reason, and I love the spirituality element to what you do and how you do it, your messages are just hitting at the right time for me personally. And my big takeaway is that idea of that conversation that you have in your own head, that conversation about censoring the negative and monitoring what comes out as well, because that's a conversation that you have with that's the biggest and the longest conversation that you have every day, is the one that's going on in your own head. You might put stuff out to the universe, but you're talking to yourself the whole time. So if those messages are monitored, the frequencies and stuff that you put out there are going to be even more positive. And you talk about the law of attraction. It's no surprise that all these things are happening to you as they are at the moment. And if this is what's happening at the moment, I can't wait to see that 65-year-old version when you're hitting your straps, because it's going to be super, super impressive. So, thank you so much for speaking directly to me and to my spirit. Really
Shay's going to come on the workshop, eh?
We'll see.
Got one in December, so come on that.
All right, we'll see.
Cheers, Jemarl.
Thank you so much.